Howdy folks, and welcome to the Hillbilly Kitchen. Today we're going to be making cheeseburger soup. Now this is the perfect weeknight dinner, or just good for a chilly winter or fall day, or just good for just whenever. And soup is an excellent way to stretch your budget because you can use less meat in this, you can use fewer potatoes, you can substitute potatoes for pasta and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to talk about all that while we make the soup. We're going to start by browning some ground beef, and you can use some other kind of meat if you'd like to. You can also use less ground beef, and that's what's good about soup. I've got about a pound. You could go all the way down to a half a pound, and this is going to make a big pot of soup. So you know, half a pound of ground beef in that, and I know a lot of us are having to stretch our budgets, but it still is going to be delicious. And maybe you've won the lottery last week and you can do 2 pounds of ground beef this week, but close to a pound as you can get it, I think. And we're just going to cook this on about medium until it starts to brown, and then we're going to adjust the fat in it. Now we need some vegetables in this. It's cheeseburger soup, but we're going to put vegetables in it. For my main vegetable, I'm using potatoes, and that's also my starch. You can substitute, like I said, pasta for the potatoes. Pasta is less expensive. I've got about 4 cups of potatoes. If you were going to use pasta, I would use about a pound. And you could use elbow or spiral or just whatever you wanted to. Shells, anything will work. But 4 cups of potatoes, and I've got them diced up here pretty small, or a pound of pasta. And you need between 8 and 16 ounces of cheese. You can use any cheese. Now, I know this is processed and not real cheese, so, you know, I don't eat it every day, but Velveeta does make a wonderful cheese sauce. So I'm using about 10-12 ounces of Velveeta today, but you can use any cheese you want, between 8 ounces and a pound. And I've got a little bit more just to dress the top up with later. You want about 1.5 cups of milk, just regular old milk, and you want 3 cups of broth or water and bouillon. And you can use the Better Than bouillon or the bouillon cubes, which are a little bit less expensive. I do like this, but I use this a lot too. And this is what our grandmothers used. This stuff is great, and it will get you through these tough times. Way cheaper than buying canned broth. And you can use chicken or beef. I know lots of folks put chicken broth in everything they cook, and if you want to use chicken, or you have chicken and you don't have beef, you can certainly use chicken. I'm going to use beef, and like I said, you can do the bouillon or the broth, whichever one you want. 3 cups. I've got some seasoned vegetables here. I have a medium onion I cut up. You want at least half a cup. I've probably got a whole cup. It was, you know, an onion, so I used the whole thing. Close to a cup of shredded carrots. And I've got about half a cup of celery that I diced up really fine. If you want your celery in bigger chunks, you can certainly cut it up in bigger chunks. And if there's anything here that you don't like, it's soup, leave it out. Or if there's anything here you don't have, don't worry about it, because you don't have to have it. I mean, this soup will make with just about any of these ingredients left out. You do want cheese of some kind. I'm going to put in about 1/4 cup of sour cream, which will also give it some flavor. And I've got about 3 tablespoons or so of butter here. This is just part of a stick of butter I had left. So you want a few tablespoons of butter. And some salt and some pepper. And any other spices that you like. I'm just doing salt and pepper because I've got the onions and the celery and stuff. Kind of keep an eye on your meat. And we want to just get it past that pink point because it's going to be cooking for a while. You don't have to worry about getting it super done. And if you only have a half a pound, make sure you chop it up really well, or bust it up really well, or crumble it up really well, or whatever you call it. because you want to make sure it's evenly distributed in your soup. Like, you don't want to leave big old chunks like this and have one person get half the meat that's in the soup. If you want to thicken your soup, and lots of folks do like it thickened a little bit, and with 4.5 cups of liquid, we're probably going to want to thicken it a little bit. There's a lot of ways you can do it. You can get out another pot and make a roux. You can put a couple tablespoons of butter in it, a 1/4 cup of flour, and brown that, and add your milk to it and make a sauce, and then add it into your soup. But that's dirtying up another pot. It's a weeknight and you're making a pot of soup. You don't have to wash every dish in the kitchen to make a pot of soup. I mean, one pot will do it. You can also add about 2 tablespoons of cornstarch to your milk, to your cold milk. Just stir it up and then pour that in your soup when you add the milk to your soup, and that will thicken it. Another way to do it is with instant potatoes, and it will make the soup a little bit heartier. It won't change the flavor of it, and it will thicken it very nicely. So I'm going to use instant potatoes today, but you can do any one of those 3 things to thicken it. You can also just bust up some of the potatoes in it that you're cooking in it. Just mash a few of them up and that'll thicken it. You don't have to do the instant potatoes. But instant potato flakes are an excellent way to thicken soup. And I'm doing that today just because I haven't really shown y'all that, and I wanted to kind of show y'all that. And that's kind of all you got to have. Now, when we get it all done, you can serve it with some crumbled up bacon. You can get these real bacon pieces in a pack. Add a little bit of shredded cheese, and like I said, you can use any cheese in it. You don't have to use the Velveeta. You can use just an 8-ounce package of any kind of shredded cheese, or you can shred your own from a block. But the bacon and the cheese served with it, maybe chop up some green onions or something, or just save a few of these diced onions and serve those with it. You can add hot peppers to it. You could put some Italian spices in it if you wanted to. You know, it's soup. Whatever you want to do to it. Dress it up and make it the way you like it. I thought about using a different cheese just because I know I'm going to get a lot of comments on that processed cheese. But like I said, it really does make a good cheese sauce, or a tasty cheese sauce. I don't know. And if you're in a hurry, that Velveeta is also going to thicken it, and you don't really need to worry about thickening it with anything. Okay, this meat is to the point where it's not really pink anymore, and we can adjust the fat in it. If you want to take out some of the fat in it, now is the time to do it. Now, if you are trying to feed a whole big crowd of people, you know, if you're making this pot of soup and you've only got 1/2 pound of ground beef, I would leave all of the fat in there for the flavor and for the calories. But if you've got a pound or more than a pound, you can take some of the grease out if you want to. Now, everything you see in here is not grease. A lot of it is the juices out of the meat. It's not fat. And I'm trying to see, I can see bubbles in there, and I know you probably can't see them, but the fat's kind of bubbling up, and I really don't have that much fat in it. I might get a little bit of it out just because I don't want the soup to be greasy. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in all of my flavor vegetables. My onion and my carrot. And you don't have to grate this carrot either. You can chop it up like I did the onion and the celery. Just dice them up. You do want to keep in mind though, it takes a minute or 2 to cook carrots. And you can also just cut them up in round pieces and have carrot pieces in there, and cut your celery up bigger and have celery pieces in there if you want that. And I'm going to add in some salt and some pepper. About a teaspoon of pepper, because this is going to be a big pot of soup and there's a lot of potatoes there. And as it cooks, the spices are going to kind of, the flavors won't be as noticeable. And I'm going to add in about 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and then I'm going to adjust my salt at the end. If you are on a low salt diet, wait until the end to add any salt, and that way your salt will have more flavor. All right, now I'm going to leave this on medium, and I'm going to put the lid on it because that will get those vegetables tender a whole lot quicker. And we're just going to let them cook 5 minutes or so. And with that lid on the pot, it will make them all nice and tender. All right, after your vegetables have had about 5 minutes, your flavor vegetables, that's what we call them, or seasoned vegetables, you should be ready to add your broth or your water and your bouillon. They should be tender and they should be kind of turning colors. The onions and stuff will be kind of translucent. But go ahead and add in, like I said, either your broth or your water and your bouillon. And you know, you can make this without any kind of broth, because what you just did with the vegetables is you made a really nice vegetable broth. I mean, you can see that looks like a broth in there, and I just added the water to it. I haven't even brought it to a boil yet. Now I'm going to turn this up because I want to bring it to a boil. It's a weeknight. We got to get dinner on the table. And this you should be able to get on the table in about 30 minutes. And any dinner you can get on the table on a weeknight in about 30 minutes is a good weeknight dinner. If you're doing the bouillon, go ahead and add it in. And I put in, I don't know, probably 2 teaspoons. You'd want to do 2 to 3 teaspoons. I think it says a teaspoon equals a cup. And we are going to add our potatoes in here. And we're just going to let this come to a boil, and then we're going to turn it down and let it simmer until our potatoes are tender. And then we'll add in this other stuff here. And it will be, like I said, it'll be ready 30 minutes. You'll have dinner on the table. Now, how long you cook the potatoes, of course, is going to depend on what variety of potatoes you're using and how big you cut them up. These are just regular old russet potatoes. You can use any potato you have. You could even use canned potatoes in here if you wanted to. If you were in a big old hurry on a weeknight and you didn't have time to peel potatoes and stuff, you could use canned potatoes and use onion powder or the dried minced onions and just add some spices to it. Not worry about the carrots and not worry about the celery. Now this will cook a whole lot quicker with a lid on it. And since we're trying to get dinner on the table, we'll go ahead and put our lid on it. Like I said, just let it come to a boil. And when it comes to a boil, turn it down a little bit, let it simmer. The size I had those potatoes cut, it'll probably take about 8-9 minutes for them to get tender. It won't take long at all once it comes to a boil. And then we'll add everything else in and we can eat. Okay, I'd be willing to bet our taters are about done. Oh my goodness, that looks good. I actually didn't even turn it down to a simmer. I just left it at a rolling boil. I'm going to turn it down just a tiny bit now. All right, now, oh yeah, them taters are done. I don't even need to get a fork to poke them. We can add the rest of our ingredients here. And I'm going to start with the cheese because it's got to melt. And that's a lot of cheese. And I'm going to go ahead and add, you can actually serve this with a little sour cream. Put sour cream on the table with some shredded cheese and some bacon and some rolls. Got to have some rolls. Or maybe a big loaf of peasant bread would be good with this. Or the sourdough bread. We're just going to put maybe a 1/4 cup in there. Just a good squirt. Or a big dollop. Depending on what kind of sour cream you've got. Now, if you wanted to thicken this with the cornstarch, you would add the cornstarch directly to your cold milk and then pour it in. I'm going to turn it back up so we can get it back up to a boil. Oh, I almost forgot my butter. And I do want that in there because that's a lot of potatoes. And the butter will make the potatoes taste better. Butter makes everything better. This is a really pretty soup too. The carrots add color to it, and you've got the potatoes, and then it has the nice cheesy sauce in it. Another thing too, so many folks have gluten allergies. Now that my cheese is melted, I'm adding my milk. That if you thicken this with the potato starch or the cornstarch, the instant potatoes, or the cornstarch, you have a gluten-free soup. And these days and times, that's kind of a big deal. Now, to do it with the potato flakes, all you do is just sprinkle them in there and stir them up. And you might want to check it, you know, like add half of them, do 1/4 cup and see how thick it is, because that might be as thick as you want it. And you might not want to thicken it at all. If you're using the potatoes, keep in mind that they do get thicker as they sit. But then again, so will your roux and so will your cornstarch, especially once it cools. Anything that you have thickened it, and anything you've thickened it with, whether you've thickened it with flour or cornstarch or instant potatoes, it's going to get thicker as it cools. And the cheese is also going to thicken up as it cools. I think I want it a little bit thicker, so I'm going to go ahead and add in the rest of these. After you've added your milk and everything, you just want to make sure it's heated back up so you're not putting cold soup on the table. And this is excellent leftover. You can even make it the day before. Like if you know your kids have got something going on at school and you're not going to have time to cook the next day, make an extra big pot and have leftovers, or just make the whole dinner the night before. If you're cooking, you know, you can do 2 meals at the same time, like do spaghetti and do a pot of soup or something. And it'll save you some time through the week. And both of those things would get done at about the same time, and you could do both of them without using every pot in the kitchen. Or do a casserole in a pot of soup. You could feed them all week on a big casserole and a big pot of soup, and cook them both at the same time. And that's kind of all there is to it. Now, as this cools, like I said, it's going to thicken more, but you can tell it's thickened when you stir it, and you can see where your spoon's been. And that's about as thick as I like my soup. If you want it thicker, it's very easy to make it thicker with the potatoes. You just add more. But be careful, because it is going to thicken as it sits. And that's it. Our soup is ready. You got dinner on the table in 30 minutes. Oops. Make some fresh bread or some rolls. And, you know, like I said, if you don't have all the ingredients or you don't have time to chop everything up, don't worry about it. Set out some bacon if you want to. And some extra cheese, because everybody likes that. Chop up some green onions. I've seen folks even add pickles to this after it was cooked. I don't think I want pickles in my soup, but you can see there how pretty it is. And with a little bread, you've got a meal. And it don't take all night, and it only uses 1 pot. Before we leave, I want to leave you with Isaiah 53:13. And all thy children shall be taught of the Lord, and great shall be the peace of thy children. We're at the start of a new school year, and there is already so much trouble that's being reported on the news. And this is the answer. This one verse has the answer in it. If you look at what is different now, you know, what changed in the last 50 years, it's that our children are not being taught about the Lord. Up until my childhood, our children were taught about the Lord in school every day that they went to school. And that's not happening anymore. And that is the answer for our children. That's the solution, so that they will have peace again. Whether you have children and grandchildren in school or not, Please pray for all of the children that are going to school this year, not just in our nation, but all around the world, that the Lord would be in every classroom, in every cafeteria, in every hallway, on every playground, in every sports arena or gym, or on every ball field, that He would be with our children and protect our children, and that He would send people to teach our children. And we have to teach our children again. Don't leave it up to school. But we do need to push for our children to be taught about the Lord again in school, because that is the answer. God gave it to us in Isaiah 54:13. I want to thank you so much for joining us in the Hillbilly Kitchen. If you haven't already, please don't forget to click like and subscribe before you leave. Share all of our recipes with your friends. Try this soup. It's a delicious weeknight dinner. It's a delicious eating time dinner. Make some fresh bread to go with it, some peasant bread, or even just a pan of biscuits. Until next time, remember to put God first.